The Spurs should only trade for Stephen Curry under one condition. Victor Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, and Dylan Harper cannot be part of the price. That sounds obvious, but it is the line separating a championship swing from a franchise-altering mistake. There is no verified Curry trade request, no confirmed offer from San Antonio, and no credible report that Golden State has made him available. This story began with Bill Simmons exploring a hypothetical, but Golden State just finished 37-45. Curry is 38 years old, and he is entering the final season of his contract at $62.6 million. If he declines an extension and decides he wants one final championship run elsewhere, the Spurs would be one of the few teams capable of building a serious offer without surrendering their future. By the end of this video, we will determine whether De'Aaron Fox, Carter Bryant, and 3 premium draft assets would be a championship price or an overreaction to the most exciting rumor of the offseason. First, separate the rumor from the evidence. Curry has not asked to leave. The Warriors have not announced a rebuild, and the major national reporters have not connected San Antonio to an active negotiation. Curry recently described himself as a realist about Golden State's situation, but he also expressed hope that the team could remain competitive. That is not a trade demand. It is a veteran star acknowledging that the franchise has questions after missing the playoffs. Treating those comments as proof that he is unhappy would turn a possibility into a false report. The contract is what makes the possibility worth discussing. Curry can become an unrestricted free agent in the summer of 2027 if he does not sign another extension. Golden State can offer him a new deal once he becomes eligible later this month, and the decision will reveal far more than any podcast trade machine. If Curry extends, this conversation probably disappears. If he waits, the Warriors entered the season knowing that the greatest player in franchise history controls the direction of his final years. He may not possess a formal veto over every destination, but no responsible team will surrender major assets for a 38-year-old superstar who does not want to be there. His preference would create practical leverage. That is where San Antonio becomes fascinating. Very few contenders can give Curry a realistic chance to win, offer Golden State meaningful young talent, and still preserve enough depth to make the trade worthwhile. The Spurs can. Wembanyama is already the foundation of a championship team. Castle and Harper give San Antonio 2 young creators who can defend, attack the paint, and carry larger responsibilities as Curry ages. The Spurs also control valuable draft assets, including Atlanta's unprotected 2027 first-round pick. The opportunity exists because San Antonio spent years building 2 timelines at once. Like the video, subscribe, and tell me, what's the most you'd give up for Curry without Castle or Harper? And the basketball fit would be almost unfair. Curry's value has never been limited to the shots he takes. His movement forces defenders to follow him away from the ball, stretches help defense several feet beyond the three-point line, and creates openings before he even touches it. Now imagine that gravity beside Wembanyama. If Victor screens for Curry, the defense has to choose between trapping the greatest shooter ever and allowing a 7'4" playmaker to attack a 4-on-3. If the big defender stays near Wembanyama, Curry receives daylight. If a wing rotates early, Castle or Harper attacks a moving defense. Every answer creates another problem. The fit works at the other end because Wembanyama can cover mistakes that would be much harder to survive on another roster. Curry no longer needs to defend the opponent's best guard. Castle can take the primary assignment, Harper can absorb difficult perimeter possessions, and Victor can protect the space behind both of them. San Antonio would not be acquiring Curry to carry a mediocre team. It would be placing the most disruptive offensive player of his generation inside a structure designed to protect him. But that entire argument collapses if Golden State demands Castle or Harper. Those 2 players are not merely prospects. They are the bridge between Curry's short window and Wembanyama's next decade. Trading either one would force San Antonio to sacrifice years of control for a superstar who played only 43 games last season. It would also remove the young defense and creation needed to manage Curry's workload. The Spurs should want Curry because he can accelerate this core, not because he can replace part of it. So, what could an acceptable offer actually look like? The cleanest outline begins with De'Aaron Fox and Carter Bryant. Fox is scheduled to earn roughly $49.5 million next season, while Bryant is around $5.1 million. Together, those contracts put San Antonio within workable salary matching range for Curry's $62.6 million deal, although the final structure would still depend on both teams' exact payroll position when the trade occurred. Golden State would also receive a proven lead guard and a young, cost-controlled forward, rather than a collection of contracts that exist only to make the math work. Then come the draft assets. Atlanta's unprotected 2027 first would be the centerpiece. San Antonio could add its own 2029 first and one additional future first or valuable swap. This is where the original proposal needs a correction. The Spurs do not simply own a clean Sacramento first in 2030. Their 2030 position is tied to swap mechanics involving Dallas and Minnesota, while their Sacramento leverage is a 2031 swap. That does not destroy the framework, but it does mean the third asset must be described and valued accurately. The obvious comparison is Kevin Durant's move to Houston. The headline return for Phoenix included Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the 10th pick in the 2025 draft, and 5 second-round selections. Durant was still producing like a superstar, but his age and contract limited how many teams could justify an aggressive offer. Curry would create a similar market. He averaged 26.6 points last season and still made 39.3% of his threes, so the elite skill has not disappeared, but he is 38. He has one guaranteed season remaining, and a knee injury limited him to 43 games. San Antonio would be buying a championship ceiling, not long-term certainty. There is also one enormous difference between the two trades. Durant was a star Phoenix could separate from. Curry is Golden State. He built the dynasty, delivered 4 championships, and became the identity of an entire era. The Warriors would not evaluate his return like a normal front office evaluates an aging player. Ownership would need to explain the decision to its fan base, and that emotional cost could raise the asking price beyond what his age and contract would normally produce. That is why Fox, Bryant, and 3 first-round assets probably would not be enough today. Golden State has no reason to accept a discount while Curry remains committed. The Warriors can pursue an extension, attempt another season around him, and wait for Curry to decide what he wants. San Antonio would be bidding against Golden State's desire to keep its icon, not merely against other trade offers. The Spurs should not negotiate against themselves before that leverage changes. But if Curry requests a move and identifies San Antonio as his preferred destination, the calculation changes immediately. The Warriors would be choosing between a serious return now and the risk of losing control of the situation as free agency approaches. Other teams might possess stronger individual assets, but they would hesitate to spend them without confidence that Curry wanted to stay. That could reduce a theoretically enormous market to 2 or 3 realistic bidders. Under those circumstances, Fox, Bryant, and a carefully limited package of premium draft capital could become competitive. Calling Fox a negative asset is too simplistic. His contract is large, his performance in the finals created legitimate questions, and Golden State might not view a 29-year-old guard as the ideal centerpiece of a rebuild. But Fox is also a 2-time All-Star in his prime, who can organize an offense, collapse a defense, and produce against playoff pressure. His value depends on the receiving team's direction. The Warriors could keep him to remain competitive, or redirect him in a separate deal if they chose a deeper reset. He is not disposable salary. That matters because San Antonio would feel his loss. Curry is the superior shooter and offensive engine, but Fox provides speed, rim pressure, and a younger body capable of handling a heavier regular season workload. The Spurs would need Castle and Harper to absorb more initiation immediately. They would also need to manage Curry carefully so that the trade is judged in May and June, rather than by a spectacular November. A team should not surrender 3 first-round assets for 82 games of entertainment. It should do it only if the final 8 playoff wins become more attainable. Bryant's inclusion carries a quieter cost. Young forwards who can defend multiple positions, play without demanding the ball, and grow on rookie contracts are exactly what expensive contenders need. If Bryant develops into that player, San Antonio may regret losing him, just as Wembanyama's extension makes cheap depth more valuable. The Spurs cannot protect every prospect in a superstar negotiation, but they should recognize that Bryant is more than a decorative name added after Fox. He is part of the long-term roster architecture. The picks create the final risk. Atlanta's 2027 first could become the most valuable single asset in the deal. San Antonio's later firsts also function as insurance against injuries, expensive extensions, and unexpected decline. Once those picks leave, the Spurs lose some ability to repair the roster around Wembanyama. Curry may transform the title odds for 2 seasons, but the bill could still arrive when he is gone. That is why 3 premium assets should be the ceiling, not the beginning of negotiations. The decision can be reduced to 3 tests. First, Curry must make it clear that San Antonio is where he wants to continue his career. Without that commitment, the Spurs would be risking elite assets on a 1-year rental. Second, the Warriors must accept a package built around Fox, Bryant, and limited draft capital. If Castle or Harper is required, the answer is no. Third, San Antonio must retain enough shooting, size, and defensive depth to support the new trio. Acquiring the biggest name means nothing if the trade removes the roster required to win with him. If all 3 tests are passed, the Spurs should make the deal. Championship opportunities are rare, even with a generational player. Curry would give Wembanyama the greatest source of spacing basketball has ever seen, provide a proven answer when playoff offense stalls, and allow Castle and Harper to develop inside meaningful games. San Antonio would not be abandoning its future. It would be using part of its accumulated flexibility to raise the present ceiling without touching the 3 players who define the next era. If even one test fails, the Spurs should walk away. They already reached the finals without Curry. Wembanyama is still improving, Castle and Harper have not reached their primes, and San Antonio does not need to behave like a desperate franchise. The possibility of Curry is attractive precisely because the Spurs can afford to be disciplined. They can make Golden State consider the offer without allowing Golden State to rewrite their future. So, should the Spurs trade for Stephen Curry? Not today, because there is no active trade to complete. They should monitor his extension decision, remain prepared if his position changes, and make one firm offer only if he chooses San Antonio. Fox, Bryant, and 3 carefully selected draft assets would be painful but defensible. Wembanyama, Castle, or Harper would be unacceptable. That is the condition. Stephen Curry could turn the Spurs from a contender into the championship favorite, but San Antonio should acquire him only as the final piece of this core, not by dismantling the core to create the headline. And to understand the financial pressure that would follow any move this expensive, watch our breakdown of why the second apron could eventually force the Spurs to make a decision on Devin Vassell.